Hello.
Hey, Dan.
How's it going?
Welcome. Good to hear your voice again.
It's been a while, hasn't it?
Yeah.
No. Worst day ever.
Well, I'm glad to see you're back, Andrew, because I was worried that was you singing in the washroom.
Wait, do you hear the music?
Yes. Is that from you?
Very quiet.
Like the do 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 do.
Hey, Jeremiah.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. Welcome.
Do you guys do this every month, correct? Or
We try.
Yeah, we try.
We didn't last month because none of us wanted to get murdered by our significant others.
All right. Because it was on February 14th.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
It's like, yes, that would be murderous.
My fiance is out on an audit, so I've been binge learning.
No, you miss her dearly. And you wish he was home right now.
I do, yeah. I mean, she's been out on audit for like a month.
Man. Come on. Come on, man. Gosh.
Well, are we ready to get started?
Sure.
I'm doing something for like another 10 minutes. So does someone else want to go first?
I can kick off and talk what I was going to talk about, Andrew. It won't take me long, so I mean that's probably quite quick. You know, we'll fit in with Amir.
Perfect.
So I've been doing a project for some guys, and one of the requirements that they had was a slider that went up and down on the screen in iOS. You know what? There's no vertical sliders in iOS.
You need to tell them no. No, I'm trying to think of I'm trying to think of some vertical sliders.
So it's okay. So what happened was, see, on Mac OS there is a vertical slider. Now it's real funky because you have to set the dimensions right, because it looks at what it considers to be the long dimension, and that's the orientation of the slider. So if you have something wrong with like auto layout, suddenly you'll get a slider in the wrong direction and you won't know what's going on. You're tugging at it and it's not moving, and you're going, what is this thing? So, I thought for the first bit that, I didn't have the dimensions set correctly. And then I went, well, what the heck? So I went looking for it. And then lo and behold, I find all these articles, no vertical slider. And so they're talking about rotating it using with the CGA affine transform and stuff like this.
So
that's going to make it
has
funky.
a vertical slider.
Sorry?
Dashboard.
Sorry, say that again, Amir.
Your dashboard, like if you scroll from the top. I mean, if you like swipe down from the top, your brightness and your volume are both vertical sliders. And then if you firm press your flashlight, that's kind of a vertical slider also.
But those aren't available as one of the standard controls. So I found one that somebody had written in Swift.
Mm-hmm.
And I converted it into RubyMotion, right? Because it was just a single file. It was only about 180 lines long. So, and they had some other particular requirements that they had for it. So this one, actually, the thumb is a little bit offset. So I spoke with the guys about it, and I said, this is, because finding one, the suggestions about turning it sideways and stuff like this, it would be kind of funky for a lot of people to do. And when you're trying to lay things out, when you do the affine transform, it does the auto layout based on your original direction and stuff like that. So you could get into all sorts of hair pulling. So I said, would it be okay if I made this public or I used it? And they said, well, let's open source it. So
oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm going to I haven't open sourced it yet. I've been calling it offset slider because, like I said, the thumb is offset from the actual bar. Because they said one of the things that they hated about the slider was you put your finger on it and you can't see where you are. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, because it's custom drawing, it's offset. This was actually, I had a call to Amir where I had something funky going on. When I copied the code over from Swift, of course, it has all these empty brackets because, they're functions being called in Swift. And Rubocop looked at the file and said, oh, you've got empty parentheses here. You should remove them because that's bad Ruby style. So I did. And then it stopped working and I couldn't figure out what the heck I had done.
And of course, he says, I broke RubyMotion. That's the first thing.
No, I said, help me because I've done something stupid and I can't find it. I knew I did something, but it took, it's the CG graphics context, right? He says, oh, well, that's a C function. And oh, yeah, okay. So just as a point, Amir, I think that at some point in the documentation, we might need to make that very, very clear.
Yeah, and I added the issue to Doctor, and that would be something that would be like if you run Doctor, so you can run Doctor on the app, and then if like the build actually fails, or if I get a stack trace, I could put a message in there that says like run Doctor just in case.
Yeah,
and it could say, okay, here's the keywords, and hey, CG rect make, or CG point or graphic context, those are C functions. Put parentheses. Same thing with the lowercase, like a lowercase k. It could say, hey, you need to use a capital K for these constants, right? So those two things that were in the Slack channel are really, really like straightforward ways of saying like, yeah, this is a thing and this is how you do it, right?
So I'm in the process. I'm actually going to make this thing so that it works in both horizontal and vertical mode. But and that's that's another thing is, you know, you're going to set the mode. It's either vertical or it's horizontal. So you know what you're doing. It's not as fancy as the regular controls because it doesn't have images at either end and stuff like that. But you can attach images, you know, you can associate it and so forth. So I haven't got a repo set up and I haven't moved the stuff in, and but you know, so I'll get to that probably over the next couple of weeks or so. And I will post where it is on our Slack channels, and I'll put it into the community board as well, just to say, you know, here's a gem, found this as a deficiency, converted it. I reference, of course, the original Swift library where I got it from because it's MIT license over there. And so, you know, you got to include the link that says, hey, you know, I got the original code from here. So I'm going to do that. There's a couple more things, Amir, that I'll probably pursue with you sort of like offline, but I think are handy.
You mean yell at me about? Yeah, that's fine.
Not yell at you about. It's more, there's some rate tasks. I've been doing a lot of stuff with different devices.
I'm
listening. Where I'm going to this device, that device, and that device, and that device.
Right.
And so I think that adding some simple rate tasks to do that would make it easier for everybody. He's actually on the Rails Slack channel. I'm not sure if you're on that. He runs Drifting Ruby, Cobol Z.
Okay.
He had actually put some stuff up a few years ago about some rate tasks for doing this. I just want to find a way that we could integrate it in so it would be available there if you wanted to use as part of the regular set of rate tasks. That
yeah. So an interesting question. When you were looking at the devices, did you really care about the usability or really just visually what it looked like?
I'm looking mainly at the, you know, if the layout's going to work on all the different devices, you know, particularly with going between the 10 and then, you know, 8, 7, 6 and stuff like that, because of my layout is very auto layout focused, and so I'm using the area margins. And I got to, you know, I'm testing all that sort of stuff to make sure that it responds correctly.
Right. So the interesting thing is what I was actually thinking about was having something like almost as a background task that would run the devices in like maybe a headless mode and then screenshot them for you and then just like save them somewhere. So at any point in time, if you run it on a single device, I could potentially simulate it on the other devices too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually it does. Yeah.
So yeah, because I mean, obviously I faced the same thing, and I was trying to think of ways to do it. So instead of like, and for me, like the root cause or the root problem is exactly what you're saying, right? I want to be able to kind of see what it looks like on the device, but I don't want to like repeat the actions over and over again and go through the whole rigmarole of, you know, starting up however many devices, right? So if I could quickly say, okay, here's my quote unquote automation script, you know, run it in the background or whatever, and then take a screenshot across all the devices and then show them to me. That feels like closer to, it sounds like that's kind of what you wanted.
Yeah, that would be helpful. I mean, there's still some aspects of, you know, as an example, and this is the guys I'm working for, they're not the ultimate client. They're actually farming out this piece of work to me. Their client with this control, they had a very specific requirement with the slider that it could be no more than 10 centimeters. So on an iPad or right. And so I had to actually open it up and get a relative view of how big it was. It could be less than 10 centimeters. Like, so if you're on a 5S, it's okay. Right. But, you know, on the devices. So I did have to test to make sure which way it would go and stuff like that. So.
No, that's good. That's good to know. Yeah, that's some interesting things. And, you know, just, again, the whole idea of the screenshot, you know, it might be helpful to even like put a ruler or something on there. Right.
Well, yeah, the ruler would be,
or grid layout or
not
something,
many
like some
people
kind of
actually
overlay.
put a limitation on there like that. They say, it's got to move with the screen, or it should fit within the screen, or something like that.
Well, so one thing that I always struggled with was like the icons themselves. Just with the concept of a ruler or like a grid system is like, so like this icon, right? This noble circle icon that I created, the circle was just off center by like maybe 2 millimeters. So when you install it, the little circle in the middle goes around and it would be like shifted down. And I'm just like, it's off center. I got to redeploy now. The current version is like that, and I finally fixed it. But same idea, right? If I had a ruler or a grid system, it would help with some of those like really pixel centric stuff, and then generally with auto layout, making sure like you've got some reasonable things happening on the device too. But yeah, I mean, aside from just the constraints of size, it's helpful with regards to alignment and making sure everything looks right. Another important point, and this is something that I guess Apple pushes out there too, is your touch radius for a given interaction should be about 50 pixels. So that premise is like if you have a button that's not 50 pixels high, the grid could accentuate that and say, hey, you're short by like maybe 20 pixels, right? You probably need to make this wider or higher. So yeah, this idea of a screenshot across devices with an overlay of some type to help visually show that kind of stuff is something that I've been wanting to do. So it's good that other people are needing this thing too, and it's not just my ridiculousness that does this. So think about. So I guess I bring it up to say, think about those kind of mechanisms. Don't just limit it to. It'd be good to have a rake test open the simulator. There's some really fancy stuff that can be done.
Yeah. But as we grow this stuff, like incrementally, finding where to put it into rake, and for instance, what I've done on a couple of projects is now I've got like specific rake tasks for the 5 or 6 devices when I'm on iOS that I'm running against. Mm-hmm. Not exhaustive, but if we had those buried in the background and they were available, because the whole syntax about, I know you put it into the README, if you run it like this and specify device equals and stuff like that, but it's like, who can remember that?
Yeah, and just so you know, these kind of changes can be done out of band now, right? So
that's way better, Amir. And the fact that it's more just a case of finding where to put it in the back of the rake pieces that control that stuff. And you had pointed that out last time. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and next release, I'm planning to push a lot of the build stuff out of band also. So with regards to like the whole build tool chain of how to build RubyMotion stuff will hopefully be pushed out of band, and then the bridge support will be out of band also. So the only thing that will be within the core RubyMotion would be the actual like compiled runtime, right? And then everything else will be pulled out of band. So that's a very, 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 very near-term goal that I want to happen, because again, like I hate that I have to wait to push some of these things out when it could have just been like, I could have just done it, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, it is going to happen.
One other quick note for everyone. We've been talking about libraries for doing formatting and stuff like that, and Amir had suggested that on the iOS and Mac side that we take a look at Masonry. And so,
and I'll have words to say about that too. Like,
okay, well, let me lead in. So I gave it a shot.
Go for it.
Yeah, I gave it a shot, and unfortunately, what we found out is that some of the trickery inside of Masonry is built on top of C macros. And I'm not sure how familiar any of you are with C macros, but these are some pretty funky macros that they're
very
doing.
complex.
and the truth of it is macros the C macros don't work, right?
Right. That is correct.
You know, it's a C preprocessor thing that when you're writing Objective C that you get a handle of, because it's kind of layered on top of regular C and all that sort of stuff. But in RubyMotion, it's just you can't use it. So because of my time constraints, I had to sort of walk away from that, and I've been doing actually regular raw constraints. Apple with iOS, I'm going to go 9, maybe 10. It was okay. 10 at least. It might have been 9. Has added these anchor things, and so the constraints are actually a lot easier to do. They're still not great. They're a little bit bulky, but they're not like where you had to define the NS constraint constructor thing and then pass it into the add constraint and how that did that. So when you have the anchors and stuff, it's actually not that bad. So if you're in just an iOS world, it's a doable thing. So that's from my side. I'll let Amir continue on, because I think you've been talking with the library maintainers on that, right?
Yeah. So I have a guy that is basically that I'm allocating RubyMotion money to kind of like expand those macros out and give us a better understanding of what's actually being generated. And then once I have that, I'll be putting that back on the Masonry wiki. So we have that available as like, here are the expansions, the macro expansions that are occurring. And then basically putting similar things in similar, whatchamacallit, introspection capabilities within RubyMotion that tells you, hey, this is a macro, run this XYZ command to expand it and see what actually comes out the other end. Because you can take a code file and then do the macro expansion and see what's there. It's just not, it's not something that if you haven't done it before, that you know what to do, right? You know to do it. And it's not something that you really look out for, say, wait, why can't I invoke this? Oh, it's because it's a macro. Let me do the macro expansion and all that. So those are irons in the fire right now. As soon as that's ready, I'll be able to put that out there and get a sample app that shows how to use Masonry. With what you said about the anchor tag, that's good news from my perspective, because if it simplifies and we can use vanilla iOS, that's in my opinion better than depending on Masonry, of course. But I don't know. I'd have to look at how much of a parity difference.
Masonry is better than the raw constraints, I think. Right?
Even with the anchor information.
Yeah. Sorry.
Even with the new anchor capabilities.
Yeah.
Okay.
The anchor capabilities are probably about halfway between the old, NS constraint constructors, where you had to specify everything with the constants and the multiple, right? So the anchor tags, for instance, I can say something like my control.height anchor is equal to constraint the wrapping view height anchor, or a sibling view height anchor. And then I can also add a constant to that or a multiplier, right? So I mean, like, for instance, if I'm doing aspect ratios, I can do it by simply passing in 2 parameters. The thing about that is you do this big long, I still call them Java train wrecks. The dot, right, things. Because
the fluid interfaces.
At the end of it, you have to do .active equals true. And so you do this constraint, and sometimes if you forget the .active, you're going, okay, now why is it not working? And
you have to yield it. You have to actually yield it and process it back out.
Yeah, it's just one of the quirks of using it. But you get used to that, and most of the constraints don't fit within the 100 characters where I suggest that my line wrap should occur, right? Which is always the thing, right? You start getting those indented on the next lines and stuff like that, and that makes your code look bigger and bigger and bigger, which is part of the thing. But
yeah. All right, cool. Anything else as far as when you were looking at the Swift version, I imagine that as far as like the amount of code that you wrote, the vertical scroll view in Swift, and when you converted over RubyMotion, it probably was 1-to-1, right? From that perspective.
Yeah, the
or maybe
lines were. I mean, the class that I have now, because I've expanded on it,
I know.
you know, and I have extra things, because doing the horizontal, I have to do the boxes all differently. But it was nearly a 1-to-1 in terms of lines of code.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the original class was like 171 lines.
Yeah.
And the RubyMotion version was, I think it was about 176 before I started adding things. It was
maybe a few or less symbols, but probably.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that Swift does have that I have to admit that I do really like is the did set observers, which can be very handy when you're setting something up, and then you know this is the code that I need to do every time I set this, as opposed to. So I had to turn one of those into an actual constructor for something. So when you set the value for this, then I have that was
the auto initialization, and then having the constraints of the compiler to tell you what defaults you need to set is really nice. Absolutely.
So other than that, most of it was I had to create an initializer method because of course they were initializing everything right straight in it, and you know, I always stick those inside of a method and stuff like that. Right. And being a control, you can't make an init, right? So I had to make something that was called in the one of the early stage. I think it's in load view or something like that, right? So
cool beans. Does anyone else have anything cool to show? Dan, Jeremiah?
Sadly, not me. I'm working on web stuff right now.
Yay. Jeremiah, you said you might have at least something to talk about. You got authorization working, and what are you kind of working on and working through right now?
Yeah, well, right now, I just now, again, I have never done iOS development, which is you know, I don't know too, like, it takes me,
Stockholm syndrome is the best way to say it.
Yeah. And well, now that I opened up Xcode today and spent, you know, probably 8 hours messing with it, I was like, oh, that's why I have to call this method. Like, it's an actual method, and and iOS is they're just translated over to Ruby, and I didn't really know that. So I mean, there's obviously some struggles with that. And also, I've never made a Rails API either. So it's just a lot of new things that I've never done before. So, I mean, I think that's the most time-consuming part.
Yeah, and from that perspective, that it's important, right, to have that new person coming on perspective, because I guess we've all been doing this for God knows how long now. But that's one thing that, because a lot of the RubyMotion community right now is at that quote unquote expert level, right? Seasoned veterans that have done iOS or have done enough of this stuff that, you know, we just forget what it feels like to be new to all this stuff. So anything that could be added within the runtime, any one of those things, any sample apps that we can build that helps someone that's new to all this stuff kind of wrap their head around it and get up and running, is really important, right? And unfortunately, we can't remember what it feels like to be really, really new to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So complain a lot to me, like DM me and say, hey, you know, I spent 5 hours on this and I wish I didn't have to do X, Y, and Z, right?
Yeah.
Because those little tidbits are gonna help in the long term.
Yeah, I mean,
so
like everything
be
that
vocal about it.
Right,
you know, whatever breaks, ask. It's important.
I mean, everything that I do, I'm going to refactor what I currently did, because I did it a little bit of a interesting way. So it's pretty messy. But once I refactor it, I'm going to like post up try to document my stuff. So anyone coming in that's new could just have a
No, I think that's
streamlined
fantastic.
process.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. Like throwing anything up there, especially on RubyMotion Applied, is if you just create a GitHub issue and just kind of throw stuff on there, we can start putting that documentation together.
The one thing that I wish that RubyMotion had would be a Rails-like server console where you can see, instead of like kind of guessing where I don't know how hard that is to implement, but it sounds pretty difficult. But like, because it's just like a random error, and I'm like, I have no idea where the bug is at.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you can step me through some of those scenarios, like once you hit one that's nice and fresh on your mind, there are definitely ways. So there's actually you can actually run an HTTP server on your iOS device. It's lightweight, obviously, but that gives you that interoperability. We have the REPL. We've got some interesting things that can be done there to give you almost like a Rails-like console. That'd
be amazing. I think that's probably 90% of my problem, because I don't know where the error is at. Nor do I know how to. I don't know how to. I just opened up Xcode today, so I didn't even know that. These the LLDB. I don't know how to. I don't really know how to read it. So it's like, oh, where's this error coming from?
Don't worry. I would say most of us don't know how to read that.
I have conveniently forgotten how to.
Yes, I conveniently forget how to read that damn thing all the time. So, yeah, and it's a thing. But if you hit one of those snags, and rope me in and kind of show me, because again, it's that perspective where it may seem obvious to me, but again, it's just I don't have that perspective anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I'll continue spamming
the
Slack.
It's fine.
All right.
Cool. But I mean, I hope you're liking it, right? I hope you're liking RubyMotion. I hope you're liking the responsiveness, the support you're getting, and it's great. Like I'm really happy that you're using it and enjoying it, at least somewhat.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. It's been a really enjoyable experience. I mean, I don't like I did some Android development, and not too much, and
I did React Native also, right?
Yeah, and both of those were horrible experiences. I hated it. I hated it so much. So I mean, certainly being in Vim is a pretty big deal for me, and being in Ruby also, it's like just a comfortable environment. Ruby is just a happy environment to be in.
Yep.
So having that, significantly changes your outlook on what you're doing.
Cool.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess after a couple of months, whenever I get a little bit more feel, my feedback will be more, I guess, be able to contribute a little bit more.
I've got like a quasi auto build script. It's not live reload, but I'll make sure to share that with you, so you can kind of play around with it, see if that's something that you might be able to hack together and kind of look at. So the idea is like when you save a file, it reloads and do some things. But again, it's just an auto build, right? It's a file watcher that rebuilds for you.
Is it like the PM load on?
It's kind of like rerun. It uses rerun, but a bit more battle hardened rerun.
Yeah.
One of the things, Amir, I've noticed, and I don't know if it's something that happened while I've been building or whatnot, losing symbols or something. It used to be that when I would hit crashes, I'd get the dump and the stack dump and everything. And of late, with when I've been working on some stuff, I have to open the crash log.
Yes. So on the device, that is a bug, and Mark and I are working on it.
I'm not on the device. I'm on the simulator.
So simulator, you should get a full stack trace.
Yeah, I was, and then it seemed to stop. Like I said, I don't know if it's something that I did either with configuration or something like that, but I find
that's odd. Yeah.
Yeah.
That is odd that you're not getting a full stack trace, because you should definitely get that at least on the simulator.
Well, I used to consistently. It was only the odd occasion that it's like it would just blow up, and it's like, oh, what happened here, right? Sort of idea. Whereas now for me, I mean, probably more than 95% of the time when I crash.
No, that shouldn't happen. That definitely shouldn't happen.
And it's it's crashing on like I've misspelled something or something is nil, and it's like I'm going. I was sure I used to get a stack dump on this before.
I'll double check and make sure I'm getting stack traces, but I would definitely be peeved if I didn't get a stack trace on at least the simulator. But if you when you get into that scenario, like we can get on G+ and kind of take a look at together, and I might be able to help you out and figure out if there's anything specific that's causing that.
Yeah, well, like I said, it seemed to stop at some point, so I was wondering if it was either something I did with my simulator or something like that. Heaven only knows, right?
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything that has changed, at least on the stack trace code line for the simulator stuff. Yeah. Lori, Andrew, do you got anything?
I'm curious to hear if you are working on a project specifically, or if you're just kind of playing around and trying to learn stuff.
Yeah, well, I convinced my I'm taking mobile app development as a course in my university, and I convinced my teacher to let me do my main project in RubyMotion. So
nice.
Yeah, it's not. I'm doing a lot of like random simple apps just for learning, but I do have a main project that I'm working on.
And if any of the other students want a license, and just no problem, just
they don't. It's a group work. They don't want to do anything. They don't have to.
Yeah, that's college, right? Do as little as possible and always at the last second. And
I'm totally okay with doing everything as long as it's code. Like, oh my God, I don't care.
But like
learning, you don't have to.
Like across the board, like if the professor is interested in it, if any of the faculty is interested in it. I'm working with universities. I'm working with UT Dallas in this area, and expanding their mobile curriculum, for lack of a better term. So if the professor itself is interested in that kind of stuff, I'll make sure that he's taking care of it.
She was asking a lot of questions about it.
Yeah, so I'd be more than happy. Just connect me, and I can give her the whole technical spiel too, and make sure throw some licenses her way also.
All right, definitely.
Yep, definitely. Cool.
Are there any areas, any features that you found challenging so far, or anything you're stuck on?
Well, there was the AF networking. I think in Lori's tutorial, she did something. She did AF motion. And then the link that you sent me, Amir, was AF networking.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm supposed to refactor it, but I haven't really got even like a simple version of that, either one of those, to work on a regular motion create app instead of, if I use Red Potion, I can do AF motion. Right. But
yeah, did you get the you got the reference to the GitHub repo that I sent you?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, so you have to do pod:/install.
Yeah, I have the pods installed, but it wouldn't. It's like undefined method get for AF networking. That was the error I was getting.
Okay, so I'll look at that with you, like whenever you get a chance. I want to look at that. I'm not dissuading, of course. I'm not dissuading you from using AF motion, of course, but I want to make sure AF networking works out of the box too.
Yeah, I'm about to let me mess with it a little bit more before I start complaining about it, because I want to briefly.
No, really, you can waste a lot of time screwing around with stuff like this. If Amir's going to help you out, let him help you out.
Yeah, because I have some sample code somewhere that already does it, and I just got to put it up there.
All right.
Yeah, there was a bug a while back with, was it AF Motion was using an older version of AF networking, but Andrew,
I think that's been fixed though.
Yeah, you patched that, right, Andrew?
I don't know where that ended up.
Okay.
I think that it still works. It's just using an older version, and if you need something specific in the new version, then you'll have to use AF networking directly.
So AF Motion is not currently.
It uses 2.0, I think. AF networking 2.0, not 3.0.
But AF Motion is basically a wrapper around AF networking to give it a nice Ruby,
idiomatic Ruby feel. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So as a group, what we try, Jeremiah, is if there's a pod that works that we can use, we generally say go for that, because the number of people that maintain the pods is, you know, there's almost as many people maintaining some of those Cocoa pods as there is maintaining some of the main Ruby gems.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so you've got hundreds of applications that are depending on some of these Cocoa pods.
Yeah.
Among them, masonry and AF networking are two of the top 5 of all Cocoa pods. So using them, you know, you're pretty safe. If you're looking at something for longer term. And so, but sometimes people will just wrap it with, you know, give it a nicer Ruby kind of a flavor, but just a thin layer of Ruby on top of, you know, some possibly horrible, ugly.
Yeah, and some of the APIs are really freaking horrible. And like specifically with AF, with masonry, you know, with the macro expansions, yeah, that's something that you can do in C, but it's going to need a wrapper. It's going to need a wrapper for Ruby. So it's just one of those things where it's necessary.
Yeah.
Is masonry just iOS, or is it Android too?
It's just iOS.
Well, it's just Cocoa because it works on Mac OS and iOS, but
yes, that's
it's
correct.
all constraint stuff, Andrew. You know, so it's all the Cocoa constraint system.
Yeah. I've been following Flexbox also, just looking at its evolution, and if you squint your eyes and tilt your head, they're starting to converge to a constraint engine also, which is not great. Great, not great. I don't know what the right answer is, but it's starting to converge to some kind of constraint engine too, which is, damn it, right? There's got to be an easier way, but it doesn't sound like it. So just keep an eye out on Flexbox in the general sense, because you might observe the same thing, and I'd love your feedback on that too, right? Do you concur, kind of thing?
Okay.
Anything else?
So I was just going to give you guys sort of an update on where I am, because I know you're going to be wanting to see stuff probably before I'm ready to do anything. So, okay, I am going to be working full-time on my coding school for the next 6 to 9 months.
That's awesome.
Yay!
Yep.
That's just because an old client of mine who did not pay me, I sued them. And you
got the money.
I got the money. I got the money 2 weeks ago. Yay!
Congratulations.
Yeah. Now, you know, on a time when I was feeling more, less entrepreneurial, I might have just tossed that money into the bank and my RRSP. That's a Canadian version of your 401k or whatever it is you Americans have. However, I'm feeling like I need to do something different with my business. So online coding school it is.
Yeah. So just to add to that specifically, I was, I guess, kind of doing some like year-end metric stuff to see how many starter licenses for the year of like 2017 to 2018 were installed. And there were 6,000 downloads of starter licenses. So what I'm thinking of doing, and it's almost like a warm lead for you for your coding school. So if you want, I can whenever a starter license of some type is downloaded, when they get in our system, when they get in my system, I can make sure to relay some of that over to you and give you an opportunity to kind of follow up. It helps me out because, you know, if they convert to a indie license, that's great for me, and it helps you out because you'll have people that are interested in learning and are new to it because they're trying the starter license and trying it out. So I think it's a win-win from both perspectives.
That would be fantastic. And
so,
I'm doing this. I'm doing this all in. So I actually
that's good, right?
Planning on doing this, and I've been working on it. I'm actually taking a business class right now.
So I'm gonna get you some emails. Is basically what that comes down to
on this stuff, and yeah. So I'm going to have a webinar that will be like a freebie thing for people, so I can send links to replays to that to these people that are downloading stuff. I think that would work well, and that would introduce them to the school with some free content, and then, you know, we can warm them up more after that.
Yeah, and the intro email that goes out to the starter license downloaders, I basically say in there, you're going to get an email from Coding School, and just say like one of our affiliates, and just kind of let you take it from there. This is good from that perspective because I don't usually have the time to follow up with every single person that downloads it, but I think this is serendipitous that it's working this way.
Yeah.
So
this is gonna be great.
Yeah, it's gonna be good.
Also, as we found out, new people have questions, and I love those questions. But one of the things that I'd like to do is make it easier on everybody to get those questions answered. So one of the ideas that came up for me is because I worked on something like this last year in my soul-sucking JavaScript contract.
JavaScript
was a Slack bot.
Okay, cool.
And if we can wire up a Slack bot and start to have even a slight modicum of machine learning in there, when people ask questions, we can have the Slack bot come up and go, hey, it looks like you're having a problem with, okay, it's not really going to be clippy, okay? But stuff like that. So we could get some of that happening, people getting served by the bot, and it saves us having to answer the same questions over and over again when new people come in. And it also gets those
that's what we
questions.
have Jeremiah for now. He's going to handle this.
Exactly. It also gets those questions answered, you know, when people come in, like in another time zone, whatever, we'll be able to get them. So that was my one thing for helping.
Can we? I mean, can we tie that to some sort of a knowledge resource? I know we lost the community board.
Yeah, and I'll talk about that too. So I got to talk about the DNS, the community board, and all that stuff. So I'll cover that towards the end.
But I wonder about, because I mean, the community, the active community, you know, the people that are here, and there's a few others, you know, and you know, every now and then we get Hui Boon chiming in, which is always nice.
It's always the right answer too.
It is.
Well,
yes, of course.
That's almost redundant, right? I mean, he has so much experience with the iOS and the Cocoa stuff and everything like that. You know, but I mean, most of us are active. We're active on the Slack channel and stuff like that, and the community board. You know, people would go there. It would be nice that if a question got posted on the community board, that it actually got routed to the Slack channel by some kind of a bot.
Yeah, and I'll talk about the community board stuff too, and you know what happened there. But yes, ideas are good around that, obviously.
So we'll see how this goes. I might be able to, and I've got hopefully some meetings coming up next week to see about getting some funding for a peon. I mean a summer student. And I might get them to work on this bot thing. It would also be useful because they'll be a new person too, so they'll be running into all the problems and can help populate things.
Yeah, and like I said, we'll DM each other, but I have allocated RubyMotion dollars for this kind of stuff. So cool. We'll figure something out.
And yes, I'm familiar with the Slack Ruby bot, and I totally would have used it if I hadn't been working at a place that insisted on using JavaScript.
In my school's Slack, we have a Python Slack bot.
I like Python. Python's cool.
No complaints against Python.
Yeah.
yeah. Python's cool.
Anyway,
Python is a wonderful language that I hate coding in.
So anyway, I just wanted
Although I'd rather probably code in Python than Java, and I have years of professional experience in Java.
Yeah, I like to say that Ruby is MacGyver and Python is Pierce Brosnan from 007, right? So they each get the job done, but MacGyver's cooler, whatever. I like the guy that can break the lock with gunpowder from a bullet. That's cool.
Yes.
Anyways.
I like that, and now I'm going to have to use that in a blog post.
Feel free.
Okay. Anyway, so I just wanted you guys to know what's going on. Yep. It's not that I'm not doing anything. It's that I'm making a whole sea change in my business right now. So I'm getting a whole bunch of things set up, and once the wheels hit the ground, it's going to move really fast.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Andrew, you got anything?
Just that I started a new job.
Yay!
Is that a wonderful thing, Andrew?
It's a wonderful thing.
Okay.
Yeah, because you were doing Android development, I think, previously, right?
Well, no complaints about my last job. You know, it was a good job, but I was doing a lot of JavaScript development also, and my new job will hopefully allow me to do a lot more RubyMotion. So
that's cool.
I'm excited about that.
That's awesome.
Wait, when did this happen? I thought you recently got a new job.
I just started on Monday.
Oh, okay. Cool.
I was at my last job for about 2 years.
2 years is a long time, relatively speaking, I guess. In our industry, 2 years is a long time, feels like.
It seems like yesterday.
Yeah. It didn't used to be, Amir.
It didn't. I know. Mr. Synthesizer with.
I had some contracts that lasted for 6 years.
Man,
now of course, they were at the government, so yeah. I have friends that are still on that contract, and that started in '99.
Anyways, well, congrats on your new job.
Thank you.
Exciting.
What are you doing at your new job?
Redacted, NDA.
Too early to say right now.
Cool.
Can you say who you work for, Andrew?
Not yet.
Okay.
Even an industry that it's in?
I mean, maybe I could, but I'm just choosing not to right now.
Yeah. I think that's fine. Yeah, sounds good. And yeah, with regards to the RubyMotion stuff, if you get any like pushback, I'm more than happy to jump on a call and be like, hey, don't be stupid, right? So no problem doing that for you if you need that kind of nudge from me. All right, cool. So on my end, all right. So first thing is motion support. So that was the toughest problem. And did y'all see my the write-up that I did on the GitHub issue for motion support? Did that make sense to y'all?
I don't think I saw it.
I didn't see it.
Which
So
That wasn't the one you pointed at us at, was it, Amir?
There were some red herrings, and then there were some other problems, and then it kind of all nothing made sense, and then everything made sense, right? And that's kind of just how it went with High Sierra. But let me go ahead and bring it up. So GitHub motion require. No, motion support. Sorry. There we go. Issues. So that's the undefined method plus for class date.
Ah, yeah, I remember that now.
all right. Yes, you were.
Yeah, but that's a. So I can go in the technical aspects of it, but it's a combination of how High Sierra returns the ordering of Ruby files.
Yes.
It's that plus the quote unquote requirement of putting modules around all of your stuff. So those two things combined exacerbated the issue, and I'm going to go into it briefly just so you all have context.
Yes.
So yeah, this is the GitHub issue. Okay. Oh crap! Oh my god! Almost. Everyone can hear me still? I didn't break anything. All right.
Do you
So
want to share
I'm
your screen at all?
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen real quick. One sec. I will share my Mac screen, I guess. And I'll just look to the left. There we go. And I need to make this bigger. You'll see that?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
All right. So here's the demonstration of the problem in its most essential form, I guess. Okay. So I have base screen, and I have a UI view extension, and I have world screen. All right, so these are my three files. Everyone see that? Let me give a little bit of a, there we go. So a little bit of spacing at the top. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So from a dependency hierarchy, what would the class hierarchy look like for this? So what depends on what depends on what?
World screen depends on base screen,
Right.
which is on the right side, and right thing depends on UI view, which is in the middle. And then that depends on
UI view
TE accessibility.
depends on that accessibility, which is in the TE module. There's a circular dependency.
There it is. That's it.
Yeah.
So the circular dependency was exacerbated because of the wrapping of everything in the modules. So what we'll release with Xcode 3.9 is a explicit warning that says you have circular dependencies, and you need to fix those, right? So remember, Ruby and the Objective-C runtime and all that stuff, it's compiled. So you need almost like a quasi preprocessor directive to show that, hey, this module is defined before actually leveraging it. And you can use, the interesting thing is that you can use the actual like defined question mark and then a constant value, right? Whatever the value is, blah, right? And that gives RubyMotion enough of a type hint, almost like a type hint or an import, that there's a dependency that needs to be compiled before this. And the interesting thing is that, so again, it was exacerbated on High Sierra because High Sierra's sorting of Ruby files is different than Sierra's. And then with this recommendation of wrapping all your own stuff inside of a namespace / module, that's further exacerbated. And what I did was I took motion support, and I have a fork of motion support that demonstrates how you can do what you need to do without using motion require. And the challenge with motion require is that motion require sets this specific flag in the rake file to false, and that flag is called detect dependencies. So if any of your apps, if you do app.detect underscore dependencies, this rake file value, if that is false, there is a very, 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 very high chance that your app will not compile on High Sierra, because the default sorting algorithm for Ruby on High Sierra is different. And it's just really weird. So the solution, the solution is like, I mean, I could do some things where I try to replicate the sorting algorithm in High Sierra, but in pure Ruby instead of like C, and kind of make that backwards compatible. But the real problem is that this really needs to be just set to true. Unless you know what you're doing, this should never be false. And the challenge is that motion require sets this to false, and then relied on the sorting algorithms that were in Sierra to do its thing.
Mm.
So those two things together cause the issue. Okay. Now just for what's it called? Completeness. If you look at library / RubyMotion, lib motion and project, and then dependency.rb. This is where the magic happens with regards to looking and finding dependencies. Okay, and the way that's done is using this gem called Ripper, which ships with Ruby. And the Ripper gem basically goes through and says, for a given Ruby file, give me all the constants in that file, and then it attempts to create a dependency hierarchy based off of that. So what RubyMotion did was that if it found a cyclical dependency, it would just remove it and say that it's up for grabs as far as how this is compiled. In the next release of RubyMotion, instead of this just being a no-op, it will warn you and explain and tell you which files have the dependencies in between them, so you can try to resolve that. All right. So the big quote-unquote community contribution we need to decide what we want to do with motion support. If we want to do a hard fork, if we want to carve out the things that we really, really care about and remove the dependencies that way, or some variant of that. But honestly, it can't be detect dependencies equals false, because then RubyMotion itself can't control the compilation, right? And the biggest issue with that is, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen somehow. How do I show it? There we go. The biggest issue with that is that not only is the detect dependencies false for the gem itself, that cascades through. So suddenly your app has detect dependencies equal to false also, right? And that can't happen. So I can make some small tweaks, and I'm going to evolve on that and try to make it more resilient, obviously. But the underlying issue is that detect dependencies needs to be true for any gems, definitely gems, and then leave it up to the consumer of those gems to decide if they want to set that to false and manually decide the build order.
So you're saying that the motion support gem depends on the motion require gem, which is the one that has the problem.
Yeah, and motion require explicitly set detect dependencies equal to false. So because it's set it to false, I can't do RubyMotion can't do the compilation order dependency hierarchy stuff, and motion require relied on High Sierra's ordering of Ruby files, which Sierra's ordering Ruby files. So if you have a High Sierra laptop and you create some Ruby files and do a sort on that, and then you do the same thing on High Sierra, you will get different file orders.
Yeah, I hit this in I have a rake task for some Rails apps, and what I do is I dump my database into CSV files, and so I can manually number the CSV files with 01-01, so I can order them.
Yep.
And then I load them in order so that you don't get in the database. You don't have to strip out all your foreign keys and then reload them back in again, which is a standard thing when you unload and reload databases and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
So it just uses the Postgres CSV loader, and it all stopped working in High Sierra because the files no longer work. So I had to go into all my rake steps and add the sort.
Yeah, the explicit sort with the comparator and stuff like that, right? Yeah. So the interesting thing is that I actually looked at dir.glob is basically what's the underlying issue, and the documentation say that there is no guarantee of sort order. But if you look at the Ruby source, there is a magic enum. They literally call it magic enumeration that looks at the file name and directory structure and kind of puts it in convention-based order where a module could be defined in a directory, so those files are loaded first and then sorted based on like the top level name. So if you had a person.rb file but then had a person.directory, dir.glob would sort everything inside of the person directory first before person.rb, because it assumed that person.rb was like a top level require relative for everything below it, but it only did it for that OS. And because High Sierra has a new file format or file system format, that partition format that existed for Sierra no longer exists. So it didn't go through that switch block, and suddenly it's non-deterministic. And that's not going to get fixed, right? They're not going to do a 2.3.1.High Sierra release. It's not going to happen.
So the big problem that we're facing with this is the motion support gem, which is used in a lot of projects.
Yeah, from what I understand,
including some ones that I'm working on right now.
Yeah, so,
and my course and stuff like that.
So the hard fork that I've created, I manually went through and said, okay, now that I understand the problem, can I demonstrate that yes, if you add that defined type hint, does it fix the hierarchy for you? And it does. And the test pass and the compiles and all that stuff. So now it's just really about putting the definitions of the files in the right places to do that. Now, the biggest issue with motion support and why this is so tricky with motion support is we're monkey packaging core classes, right? So when you think about, okay, base object is at the top level, what depends on the base object, right? Kernel, and then you're looking at the Ruby hierarchy at that point. So you got to be really careful about not monkey patching in circular dependencies, which is what was happening.
But this is really the problem with motion require, right? Setting detect dependencies to false.
Yes, and the thing is that if you set but motion require explicitly sets it to false, so you can use motion require within motion support. So the motion require function in motion support in my hard fork has been removed, and I let detect dependencies figure out the hierarchy.
Who's the primary maintainer? Is it Clay?
It's Clay, and historically, I think what happened with that code base was that the dependency.rb file wasn't as battle hardened as it is now. So the circular references and circular references just wasn't a thing that was entirely supported. So someone created motion require to alleviate that issue. Since then, dependency.rb has been fleshed out a bit more to where motion require really isn't needed.
Because, like, I guess I'm wondering, is this something that we could just move forward from?
Yeah, I mean, I think motion require is no longer needed. Motion support totally. Form motion also uses motion require, so that also has to be fixed.
Well, Clay did form motion too, right?
Yeah, yeah, and with Red Potion and with Red Potion, I also found circular dependencies there. They're not causing build errors, but there are circular dependencies in Red Potion also. And I created an issue that at least prints out the circular dependencies and say, these are the files that are the perpetrators. So you just gotta kind of unwind that, and I can support you in doing that. But that's the Ripper dependency High Sierra issue.
Okay.
Okay. And we'll work through it as needed. The things that people care about, again, we'll work through it.
Yeah. I was just wondering, because I think Clay still actually does updates to it and everything still. He's
That's good to know. So I'll try reaching out to Clay and see if he's got any input on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, the hard fork I made is simply a reference implementation and a demonstration of how it can be done. I don't intend that to be like the new version at all. I would love if we can just fix motion support and then move forward with that.
I think it makes sense to try and get motion require deprecated.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's
the short
Yeah,
version.
I remember
push that.
I remember a time when motion require was a requirement in order to get things done.
It is no longer the case. And now it's a detriment because detect dependencies is false on it.
So can you still manually, if you have got detect dependencies set to true, can you still like manually specify that you want one file required before another one?
You're going to be working by reference, but yeah, that build order array, just don't blow it away, and you can unshift a file and put it at the top, I guess, right? But with the circular dependency warning and even in my own projects, the moment I put that in, I was able to get rid of all my sorting stuff, and I just figured it out. And that was the issue in my stuff because I had the accessibility under the module, but that was getting mixed into UI view, which is a top level thing. So the moment I removed that from the module, from the TE accessibility from the module, everything worked. So it's just lifting that up and communicating to you that this is a circular dependencies that is non-deterministic. So Jeremiah, you see what I mean when it comes to like all these like crazy advanced topics? Like this is a thing, right? So so that's the Ripper issue. Okay, so that's taken care of. With regards to masonry, I'm working on some tasks to help with macro expansion, kind of showing what that would look like in Objective. So basically detecting that in Objective-C that a specific function is a macro, warning the RubyMotion developer, and then providing the expansion for you. So you have a means to say, okay, this is the macro expansion. This is how it needs to be set up. So that's on my list of things to do. Again, generally applied outside of just masonry, right? I want to make sure that that's plenty obvious. So same issue happened with ARKit. There's some type defs that are macro expanded. So you expect the 4x4 vector for blah, blah, blah type def to be there. And that type doesn't exist because it's actually inline for something else. Same deal is happening there, right? So I'm working through the macro expansion for some of the more interesting core like SIMD and SIMD libraries and all that good stuff. So that's in the pipeline. I probably won't make it for Xcode 3.9, but as soon as I have some good sample apps that show that it's working, and then as soon as I have the masonry sample app that show what the macro expansion looks like and what the API could potentially look like in RubyMotion, I'll push that out as quickly as possible. And it will hopefully be out of band, right? All the build stuff and macro expansion and rake file stuff will be out of band.
Cool.
So I'm going to position RubyMotion to be able to do that, and then we can update it that way. Final thing was the DNS issues. So Gandhi is the DNS provider. Screw you, Gandhi. Go to heck. Not the person. He's cool, right? But the name server and the DNS the DNS registrar, they did horrible things to me. So they basically did this like, oh, we have a new DNS thing, and we're going to upgrade everyone. And they upgrade everyone and then hosed just, they blew away my SSL certs. And so I lost HTTPS, the DNSs were gone, and then community.RubyMotion DNS was hosed also. At that same time, The DigitalOcean machine for community.rubymotion also just wonked out. So I have an old backup that has a reference, and I'm working with DigitalOcean to get the latest backup of community.rubymotion.com. So I rewired all the DNSs. Everything's on DN Simple now. I have new SSL certificates. All that's taken care of. I created a new community RubyMotion page as a stopgap, but I have mixed feelings about keeping that versus and providing a good dump, a searchable dump of everything that was done in the past RubyMotion. Primarily because I wanted to refocus what community.rubymotion was about, as opposed to just being like a support thing. It can of course continue to be that, but I want community.rubymotion to be more about the business acumen of building mobile apps, as opposed to, hey, I got this build issue, how do I fix it? Those could be GitHub issues in RubyMotion applied. They could be done in the Slack channel. Those are things that can be done inside of all these out-of-band GitHub repos that could potentially service these general errors that we're getting. So if we have that supporting stuff on those ancillary things, yeah, if someone posts it, I'll say I'm tracking it here, and then essentially close that issue. But with regards to community.rubymotion.com, I really want that to be about the business of building apps, right? What's a good app? What's a bad app? What's a good UI? What's a bad UI? What kind of conversion rates do you expect on IAPs? All the secret sauce that goes into building a successful mobile application outside of just the tech. That's, again, I'm just throwing that out there, and I'd be open to your thoughts. I've got some conversation points that I've opened up. I'd love your feedback, some collaboration on that, some talking about that kind of stuff. But anyways, that's what I think would be really good in general for that community forum to be about.
Amir, from my own viewpoint on that, I mean, having access to be able to search what was in the old, because before the Slack, that was the repository, that was our knowledge base.
Yeah. So I have a link. To it's just an IP address link right now, which is in the first forum post, and it's from December. So it's a few months old, but generally everything that all the old archive stuff has been there. So I'm going to use the Discord APIs and pull all that stuff out, and then provide that inside of RubyMotion applied. Potentially just create the GitHub issues for all that stuff. Okay, so that's going to happen. Community.rubymotion.com is now hosted on Discord, as opposed to some dinky ass like DigitalOcean server. So that is managed by Jeff Atwood's company, and with all the uptime and all that stuff, right? So that just makes sense to make sure this never happens again. And now it's just about what do we do from here? And I'm thinking pulling out all that archive data, creating GitHub issues on RubyMotion applied, and using the conversations and the threads themselves as additional comments within the GitHub issues. So those are entirely searchable. And then anytime that someone asks a question on community.rubymotion.com, I can flag it, open an issue in the right repo, whether it's build, bridge support, RubyMotion applied, or the iOS templates. And then that could be a work item that could be picked up by me or the community, whoever feels like they can contribute to that. And then keep RubyMotion, community.rubymotion.com about the business of apps. What do you think?
That sounds reasonable to me.
So I'm rebranding it as a reboot, as opposed to all hell breaking loose at the exact same time. After Apple Christmas, because of course, it has to happen right when I have downtime. It's like, hey, we're going to just blow everything away.
At least it didn't happen during Apple Christmas.
Oh my gosh. I would, yeah. I don't think you would see like a clean shaven man with hair.
Your hair would be
right
this
now.
color.
If I had any. Parts, patches would be taken out, stuff like that. So,
I guess my thoughts on it are.
What do you think about it?
it seems like if a reboot seems fine, but it seems like all that old content should get imported back into the forum if possible.
So you're saying that you would prefer that to be inside of the RubyMotion forum?
Yes, keep it in the place where it was,
Okay.
but change the atmosphere of what it's being used for today.
Okay. I'm not opposed to that. My primary quote unquote issue is that some of the things in there were generally stale. Like, during the acquisition, 8.3 just wasn't working, right? So you had like, oh, 8.3 isn't working, 8.3 isn't working, and I couldn't say anything, and then finally it started working. And some of those like weird quasi things are there, but add noise. And there are some valuable things. It's just tough to curate that and figure out what was valuable and what wasn't. So if we're going to do that, I would still only want to import those things that I really feel like are helpful. But I need help in curating that list based on the archive.
Well, wouldn't you have that same problem if you were importing it into GitHub issues?
In the GitHub issues, it's less of an issue because it doesn't add noise to the forum and the new quote unquote direction to the forum, right? Because the GitHub issue, I can do that and then put a comment and close it. And then it's just a closed GitHub issue. And it's easy enough to triage that way as an issue, as opposed to like a forum back and forth. Does that kind of make sense? Do I make a fair point? Someone help me.
Andrew, I'm wondering why you think it would be better in the community forum as opposed to as a GitHub issue. Is it just a preference, Andrew, or?
Yeah, it's not a fully formed thought. Just that's where we had those discussions, and now
I get it. Yeah, I understand that aspect of it. And I'm fine with like a halfway thing where it's like some of those discussions make it back, but some of them I'll basically close out and you won't see them, right? Because it just adds noise. It adds noise. It's just a lot of like the hello, introduce yourself. Some of those people probably aren't even using RubyMotion anymore, right? So doing the reboot and having a clean forum, albeit doesn't look like there's a lot of activity, but at the same time, it's a true representation of who's actively using RubyMotion and who's actively participating in the community, as opposed to the noise of everything that happened before, right? So,
is there any? I'm just, throwing this out there. How about we bring back the original content and leave it in a read-only state? People can't.
Yeah, I mean, I can basically create
that. It's
I can basically create archive.rubymotion.com or archivedcommunity.rubymotion.com or some variant of that, and have that permalink available for anyone that wants to continue using the old forum, I guess.
I'd still like to make it like read only, and prominently say on it, hey, take these discussions to the, if you have any, to the GitHub issues or the Slack or whatever.
So no firm decision on any of this until I get the backups and see what the state of all that is. But just something to think about. Either way, I would love to have your contributions on the current open topics that are out there. And if you have topics centering around, anything around mobile app development, guidelines for good UIs, all that non-tech stuff, we can be a good critical mass for that kind of information. Because I don't think that kind of information is available anywhere outside of that. And then for the wider mobile audience, I think it's a great way for other mobile communities to find this stuff, valuable stuff, on the RubyMotion forums and say, yeah, this is not tech related, but it's really valuable, and I want to collaborate with these people because they know what they're doing, right? As opposed to just saying Ruby code and going, there's all this Ruby code here, I'm going to run away, right? So anyways, that's my 2 cents on that. Just think about it. Tell me what you think. Yell at me in my DMs. Andrew's like, I'm going to do it. You wait. You wait, you. But that's all I got, guys. Unless you got any other questions about. So 3.9 is happening soon. I just installed iOS 11.3 beta 5. So we're up to beta 5 now. And there hasn't been a 3.9 drop. WWDC is in June. So that's when, you know, things are going to get fun again. We have a good.
Amir?
I'm sorry?
You go?
I will be looking for a golden ticket, yes. Unfortunately, I get no special preference either, so I will be in the lottery for a golden ticket, and we'll see if I get one. And then pray to the Apple gods that they give that to me. But yeah, that's basically it from that standpoint. But yeah, June's obviously going to be interesting. We're going to see what happens in June and see if they deprecate iPhone 10 and go back to the original screen sizes and say, whoops, we're sorry, or what the hell's going to happen there. Because, of course, that's going to be fantastic and fun and wonderful. But, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Hey, what about the video game template you talked about?
Yeah, I can kind of show that to y'all. So it's where did I put that? So this is going to be a RubyMotion template that comes out. So you'll have -- create RubyMotion sprite kit basically, and it's going to have this suite of guidance that shows you how you should make a 2D game. And github.com. So right now it's just a RubyMotion app, so you can just clone this and then give it a shot and see if you like it. Is it this one? No, that's the old version. Is it this one? No, that was the old version. You can tell how organized I am. That is also the old version. Where did I put this thing? Did I give it the title cased approach? RubyMotion sprite kit. That's what I called it. Yes, there it is. Yep. So you should be able to just clone this repo and run rake, and it should just work. And I can kind of step through it. I think I posted like a quick Twitch video inside of RubyMotion Game Dev that kind of explains some of the intricacies of all the different scenes that I show. But this basically gives you enough to be dangerous. It gives you become dangerous enough to where you can make a 2D game in RubyMotion on SpriteKit. And there's about 6 to 7 scenes. You have a poor man's camera for your scene management or your viewport management that, again, I've kind of codified based off of all the games that I built. And then I create a very lightweight, very bare bones Space Invaders game. So for college students, they love building video games and think it's freaking awesome. So this would be a great way to show, like, hey, you know, here's an awesome game, and look at all the stuff that I get for free and whatnot. But RubyMotion Sprite Kit coming soon to RubyMotion templates near you. And once that happens, once I have the template out there, I'll be reaching out to Ruby Weekly. So there's a good marketing push with, hey, you know what? Have you always wanted to build a game? Here's an opportunity for you to do some like fun hobby development with some batteries included, and potentially make something that you can play around with and enjoy, right? So more centered around not business app development, but just the joy of using Ruby and potentially trying something new. So once that's done, the press release will go out to Ruby Weekly and potentially some other mailing groups. I want to see if I can contact the NS what's it called, NS Screencast group, and some of the more wider mailing lists and get there and see if we get some interest there too.
That sounds awesome. I'll have to check out the video. Realize it was.
Yeah, the videos in the game dev. If you scroll up, it's a link to an S3 instance, and you can watch the video. But definitely just try it out. I would say if you can just bring it down and deploy to the simulator, I think you'll have fun. I think I try to do a pretty good job of commenting all the code in there. I need to make a couple more passes with regards to like the space invaders and some more of the advanced particle effects and things that I do in my video games, and kind of get a nice again, batteries included, sprite kit batteries included experience for Ruby devs. But I think you'll enjoy it.
Cool. All right, thanks.
Cool. So a little bit of marketing, but a little bit of fun stuff too.
And with that, that's about all the time we have for tonight.
Yay!
Beauty.
So one other thing that I'm looking at. So I'm still working on getting a Switch SDK, and the interesting thing there is that from what I've been able to barely glean from all the searching that I've done, it looks like they do use some form of C-Lang for the compilation of their stuff onto Nintendo Switch. So if they use C-Lang, that means they use LLVM, which means that there is, depending on how hard it is to tease the Objective-C runtime and how much of that could potentially maybe make it onto their SDKs, that would be something really interesting to see happen also. So as soon as I get access to an SDK, I'll be able to peruse that kind of stuff and maybe have something interesting come out that end also. And the point I'm bringing it up is that RubyMotion, remember, is a compiler for LLVM. The fact that just happens to work on mobile, right? So as far as branching out and growth of RubyMotion, RubyMotion for WebAssembly, RubyMotion's conversions with mRuby and open source, and then potentially supporting proprietary platforms like Switch, right? Those are all fringe things that expand outside of just Mac OS and mobile. So anytime you hear LLVM C-Lang, that is a opportunity for RubyMotion to be in that realm, which is cool. That's it.
Cool.
Great.
Sounds good.
Till next time, friends and family.
Thanks for joining us. It's been fun.
All right. Bye.
See you guys.
Thanks,
All right.
guys. Bye-bye.
Next time.
Bye.